Like, this is a court that exists more or less in theory. There's probably 40 or 50 people who work there, and Judge Cassese, Professor Cassese, is trying to build up this tribunal, right? He's trying to essentially argue that we have relevance, right? The ICTY has relevance. And what he said was, the role of the tribunal cannot be overemphasized. Far from being a vehicle for revenge, it is a tool for promoting reconciliation and restoring true peace. Okay, so we saw before that that element is in the Security Council's actual statute, or resolution adopting a statute, peace and reconciliation. Here, Cassese, and I don't mean to say that Cassese is just sort of this pie-in-the-sky jurist who thinks that law can solve everything. He's very much not. It's a very long report, so I'm giving the talk, so I'm allowed to take whatever sort of looks good from it. So he's not all, naive. But here he says, right, the tribunal is about more than these other things. It's also about promoting reconciliation and serving as a tool for peace. Okay? This is early ICTY. The question is, how does it do that? Right? How does it actually serve? It's holding people to account, but how does that serve to bring peace? Right? This is a particularly difficult question in 1994, when there are maybe 70 people who've been indicted, and yet nobody's in the dock, right? There are no defendants being held at the Dutch prison near the beach in The Hague, right? And it also doesn't answer the question. So early in the middle 1990s, the big mantra was, no peace without justice, right? No peace without justice. And it's still one of the core values of the international justice community, those who advocate international justice. But what if justice conflicts with peace? Maybe it doesn't, right? And that's something that we can talk about. Maybe justice always can be a part of peacemaking, but it's sort of how you do it. But what if simply having the tribunal out there doesn't serve to deter crimes, but what it might do, at least for those who've been indicted, maybe it encourages them to think, well, I can't lose this war now, because if I lose this war, I'm going to be going to prison in The Hague. Right? So there's something that needs to, well, in thinking about the purpose of peace and justice and how those interrelate, have to think about some of the impacts, some of the maybe unintended consequences as well. Okay, so that's early ICTY though. And then we see, this is Judge Gabrielle Kirk McDonald, who was actually a federal district judge in Texas. And she was the second president of the ICTY after Cassese. When she went over to the tribunal, she was the first American judge to sit on the ICTY. She was presiding over the first trial at the ICTY. So this is 1996. So 2 years after Cassese says we're all about peace and reconciliation, she says something quite different. So she says ensuring, and this is in the context of a specific trial, so you should read it in that context as well. She says ensuring that this first trial will be conducted as fairly and as expeditiously as possible, with justice being both done and being seen to be done. That's the main purpose. Regardless of all of the apparent trappings of today, she said, that is its sole raison d'etre. That's its only reason for being. Right? Its only reason for being is to do justice in this particular case. Right? Separately, she writes about how it can't be about all these other things. It can't be about peace and reconciliation. Now, there's other purposes as well that might be involved here. Right? There's purposes of telling the narrative. Right? Telling the narrative of what happened during the war. There are purposes about truth-telling in general. Right? And those are valid purposes. But what Judge McDonald, what Hannah Arendt are suggesting, and even what some of the members of the Security Council are suggesting is, when we have an actual trial, like the trial can only be about guilt or innocence of the individuals who were brought there. As far as the whole tribunal is concerned, what are its purposes? Can it do these other things? Right? Can it bring peace to a region? If it can, how does it do so? Can we sort of pick and choose among those cases where sometimes it might foster peace and sometimes it might not? Right? Or should we think of these international tribunals as, well, if we have them, then just like, although it's not just like it, but in domestic situations where you have a federal prosecutor and he sees a crime, right? In the idealized version of that, he goes after the criminal, right? You see a crime, you go after the criminal. Of course, prosecutors also have some discretion, right? They don't have to go after every criminal. That's a little bit hard to sort of figure out how that works on an international level. When Luis Moreno Ocampo, the chief prosecutor for the ICC, has these different cases in front of him, which one does he choose? Right? Does he decide in the case of Darfur not to go after Bashir because of the impact it might have on a peace process, or the impact that it might have on individuals in refugee camps, because Bashir might react by kicking out aid workers, as he did? Should that be a part of what he considers? Right? In other words, should it be part of his consideration when he's thinking about who to indict, whether it won't be moving towards reconciliation, but it'll actually be undermining that? The sirens are made me think, right? What a lot of people think about these international tribunals, particularly about the ICC, is that they're sort of an emergency, rapid response vehicle in order to bring justice, right? And that's an open question whether that's actually possible, whether it's a plausible way of thinking about these things. Now, regardless of all these doubts that I might be kind of seeding for you in terms of whether international justice works or what its purposes really are meant to be, I want to end with this quote by Hannah Arendt again. I'm going to start with Hannah Arendt, to end with Hannah Arendt. She said, "If genocide is an actual possibility of the future, then no people on earth can feel reasonably sure of its continued existence without the help and the protection of international law." In other words, she's got a lot of doubts about these tribunals, or at least about that one particular court. She has a lot of doubts about whether you can have a court, whether you can have a trial that really teaches people about crime, whether it really teaches people about some conflict. She doubts that. And yet she still believes that international law and the implementation of international law is crucial in the face of genocide, in the face of war crimes, in the face of crimes against humanity. There's no question about that, and I don't question that at all. The only question is whether these tribunals serve those purposes. Right? As we're moving forward in international justice, it's easy to see for the last 15 years at this time where you've got international courts from Bosnia and Rwanda to Cambodia, Sierra Leone, and now the International Criminal Court, which is in some ways kind of a Middle Africa kind of court at the moment, right? And you can look at that and say, wow, international criminal law is a major player in international politics today, and in part that's true. But I think what General Clark said in the little section of the film is also true. I don't think it's irreversible. In other words, the ICTY and the ICTR, the Rwanda and Yugoslavia tribunals, those are going to shut down in the next few years. The International Criminal Court has several cases, but it's in a lot of ways struggling with its leadership, struggling with whether it's going to get somebody like Bashir. And in some ways, international criminal justice is also shrinking. Right? It's becoming more about the ICC, and so it puts a lot of weight on the shoulders of Ocampo and others in The Hague. So it's unclear if it's going to work, but I think in order for it to work, we need to know what it is that we want it to do. And I hope that this could be an opportunity for you to think about what you think about these courts, whether you think they're effective, and what you think they should be. So thank you very much. I'm happy to